Okay, looks like Josh just joined us. Welcome. I'm going to make you co-host, Josh, and then you can unmute. So I want to introduce Josh Adams. I've known Josh Adams for over a decade. He is one of the very best farmers in the world, I believe, when it comes to forage production, quality forage production. He has dispelled the myth that growing high quality forage is degenerative. He actually is able to regenerate soil while growing high test forages. Um, his business, Living Soil Management, is is an incredible business focused on helping farmers and ranchers to rebuild soil, which in turn makes their crops healthy, their livestock healthy, the land healthy, their bank account healthy, themselves healthy, cleans up the environment. It's a pretty amazing processes that he's been inspired. And so, Josh, glad you're able to join us here today.
Yeah, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can, we can.
All
Josh is
right.
traveling today. Appreciate that he jumped on, took some time out of his schedule to be with us.
Yeah, you bet. Well, it's an honor to be here. Share a little bit why we do what we do and just focus on that today. But the origin story, I got into farming a long time ago. Uh, I don't come from a family farm. I simply farmed as a kid with working for neighbors and friends, and I just loved it. I enjoyed it. There was something about it that just spoke to me. And I went into other business after I was grown and left, and I decided to just continue that agricultural path. The other businesses that I was involved in weren't fulfilling. It wasn't where I belonged, so I jumped out and bought a farm when I was 25 years old somehow, and just went for it. And I noticed that everybody used synthetic chemicals, and that's just how you farmed. And I was fine with that. I didn't have anything against it until I got home from a trip and I noticed all my alfalfa fields had been eaten down by alfalfa weevil. And so I called in the spray planes and they came and they sprayed all my alfalfa fields and killed the weevil. But in the process of that, the bunch of those synthetic chemicals they came and they landed on my lawn. And we had just had our first child at that point, and I thought, and it completely offended my senses. And I thought that my daughter has no business being out on that lawn that smells, very offensive, very terrible. And so I thought, I wonder if there's a different way to do this. And so we just, and I had complete control over this big farm, and I was able to iterate and work on it. And I'll be darned if we didn't figure out that biological farming is possible, profitable, and a high yielder. And so anyway, we farmed that way for a long time, and I didn't even know that there was anything special about it. I'd never heard the word regenerative before. I didn't know anything about that. All I was trying to do is see if I could grow a lot of healthy crops, a lot with high yields, make the soil better, and make money for my family. That's all I was focused on. Well, it turns out more than just me are interested in that. And so, yeah, we started a business called Living Soil Management to be able to expand that kind of management all over the place. And I believe that that's important for a few different reasons. I thought, maybe we should just buy more farm ground and just farm more acres this way because it seems to be working. And there's, we don't have any weed problems. We don't have any pest problems. We have high yields. The elk and the deer love my farm, and they stay out of the other farmers' fields that that spray chemicals. And I thought, well, that says something. You couldn't drive a herd of cattle down the road past our farm ground. You'd have to dig those cattle out of our fields. And it was funny. They would trail just fine with no fences, trail right down that road past grain farms, potato farms, other alfalfa farms, no problem. They trail right down the road. As soon as they would get to the Adams portion, where we had been treating with nothing but biological farming practices for years and years, man, they'd pile out. Those animals, they know what healthy is and they know what nutritious is. And so I thought just evidence after evidence after evidence suggested that this is a good thing. I wonder if it can be expanded. And so one thing led to another, and we actually started a management and consulting company focusing on management. where we treat primarily for irrigated farm grounds all over the country, and we're expanding rapidly. But the why behind that is if it's possible, one of our methodologies at Living Soil Management is we feel like if it's possible to farm and grow, feed, food, fiber, and fuel without synthetic toxins, why shouldn't we? I feel like that's a pretty big deal. And and I'll be darned if that's not what we're doing. And so we can farm if it grows in soil. We believe that we can farm it up without any synthetic toxins. And this is because it feels to me that life, God is in charge of life. God is also the creator of this world, in my opinion. And so I believe that why not just try to mimic and mirror his processes, the God of nature's processes, to be able to turn the 5,000 horsepower of solar energy that lands on every square foot of earth every year. How do we turn that into nutrients that can nourish and not give ourselves these adverse reactions that are killing kidneys and killing livers and killing pancreases out there in the world? I didn't ever see a kidney clinic when I was a kid, and now every time I drive through any kind of city at all, there's four of them. There's a reason for that, in my opinion. And it can't all be blamed on farming, but quite a bit of it can, in my opinion, because um, it takes nutrients to be able to create health in any kind of living organism, right? And so one thing that we're doing, I wish I had a whiteboard. I do better. I'm a visual guy. I wish I had a whiteboard here, but if you think about how ground gets fertilized right now, we put little in chemical systems. Throw little prills of fertilizer out on the ground, and then we rely on irrigation water and rainwater to drag that solubilized nutrient down to a root. The root then soaks up that solution, and then the plant is fertilized. Well, fair enough, but one thing that they forget to teach you in school is that minerals are a very poor dissolver in water, right? So in 1911, one bowl of spinach had the same nutrient density as 11 bowls of spinach today, and we're talking minerals. The reason behind that is because there's a different way to fertilize, right? There's Mother Nature's way. And how Mother Nature does it is she has little microorganisms that buzz around in the ground in the soil profile, and they're like little beavers. They're constantly chewing apart chemical and electrical bonds down in the soil profile. What they're doing is they're aligning soil particles, they're changing the environment in which they live to be able to create a healthy environment for the root that's now poking down, that they want to have a transaction with, that they want to have a relationship with. So these little bugs, these little microbiological bugs, they want to create a nice little happy home for the root to bust through there, because their job is to grab minerals and nutrients and drag them over to this little root hair and feed this root hair minerals and nutrients, right? Well, in return for that, up to 40% of the photosynthetic energy that plant is taking is converted into sugar, in which gets then shoved out into the end of that root hair as a root exudate, it's called. It's just basically a little bit of sugar to be able to feed that microbiology. So the microbiology comes over, chews on that sugar, says, "Hey, that's a pretty good deal. I'm going to go get some more nutrients for this root so that it keeps feeding me." And so all that process right there, I call that microbial translocation. So that is, in my opinion, that is God's fertilization program. But the tough part about God's fertilization program is it's very susceptible to getting messed up and turned around by herbicide, pesticide, fungicide, and every other kind of side there is. Okay? And so that's a big problem. So those little microbiological organisms that do that activity, that bring nutrients into this living system, they require air, and they require places to live, and water to be able to move, and air to breathe. We'll just say that. And it's interesting to me how in this world of, I don't know, organic, regenerative, whatever, all the words and terms you want to use, I just call it biological farming, that we say reduce chemicals, reduce whatever else, bad practices. And I don't like that very much. It's kind of like saying, you know what? Instead of smoking 3 packs a day, I'm only going to smoke 1 pack a day, and I'll call myself a non-smoker. That's how it feels to me. And so at Living Soil Management, we absolutely forbid 100% every kind of synthetic toxin there is. That is not allowed. If a farmer that we're working with chooses to put any kind of synthetic side of any kind on their ground, they're no longer under our management. We have to walk away just because it's completely antithetical to the biological system. So I love every other tool though. Every other tool is on the table. Technology, let's use it. Some tillage, sure, let's use it. Tillage is natural. Uh, uh, minerals, mined minerals, you bet, let's go. Anything that Mother Nature understands is 100% on the table. And so the trick, here's the trick. I'll tell you the trick. The trick is that we've been at this for 19, how long, Jared? 19 years probably at this point. And the trick for us is to, okay, figure out soil and sap samples, figure out what the profile is, figure out what the bugs are in the ground, and treat accordingly, and zero in on the proper amounts of micro and macronutrients that ground needs, as well as the biological life and then the biological food. But what we do is we try to keep it very simple. And so we narrow everything down to a very simple process of elimination. We think, okay, let's forget the noise and let's just say, okay, well, there's only 5 things. Let's quit being complicated. There's only 5 things. There's matter, and there's energy, and there's space, and there's time, and there's intelligence. That's all there is. There's only 5 things. And so let's quit being stressed out about it and say, okay, our management needs to consist on one of those 5 things. All right? Matter, energy, space, time, and intelligence. It's either lacking or abundant in one of those areas. And so when we employ all of those things and then become able to read what Mother Nature is trying to tell us, then abundance can occur because, like I previously stated, we're just being bathed in energy constantly from the sun. And a lot of us out there have good rain resources. We have good irrigation resources, and so we need to take these different resources that we have that we're honestly bathing in, and turn it into sustainable human nutrition, one way or the other. Any questions about that?
This is really good. Just repeat those 5 things again, Josh. I'd love for people to take note, and then maybe give us an example of when you would notice, like, okay, one of those is missing. What's going to be the indicator that we need energy or time or matter or space?
Yes. So the only thing that exists in this world are 5 things. It's matter, energy, space, time, and intelligence. Okay. And so an example would be, okay, so maybe because I promise we have farmers on here that are saying, hey, if I don't throw 200 units of urea on my corn, grass, whatever, it completely falls apart. Okay, fair enough. That's because you don't have a couple things. You don't have energy, and you don't have intelligence. Okay, if you require that much synthetic chemical input, synthetic fertilizer, then that means that there's no air in the soil profile, which means there's very few microorganisms to be able to translocate nutrients in the soil profile, which means that there's no mineral or nutrient translocation, which means there's no intelligent communication between that root hair. I don't know how that works. From the root hair to the microbe, somehow that root hair tells that microbe what it needs, and that microbe knows what kind of nutrient or mineral it's asking for. That's intelligence. And so you're lacking those things. You're lacking energy because there's no microbiological activity, and you're lacking intelligence and energy. So you're lacking those 2 things, right? If I go onto a place and it's all pinched out and it looks yellow, it looks like it's overcrowded. Well, that's a space issue, right? You don't have enough space for your crops. If you jump onto the living soil management system, right, and you say, okay, no more synthetics ever. we want to really pop this stuff. And we treat with microbiological extracts and plenty of minerals and nutrients, then we have to suffer because we need more time. And that's the annoying thing that a lot of people find with that's so satisfying about chemical farming, right? It's kind of like liposuction, instant results, no work required. And so people love to farm that way. They love to farm that don't know any better. They love to farm with I call it caffeine and sugar diets, basically. I tell people all the time that if you give my 6-year-old daughter a Red Bull and a Twinkie, man, you're going to see results right away. She's going to bounce off the walls, man. If you go and hit a field with Roundup, man, satisfying. The next day, she's brown, she's dead, perfect. Instant gratification, right? That's not how biological farming works. Unfortunately, even though it's very satisfying to see that immediate gratification, sometimes these things they take time because what we have to do is we have to use through mechanical means or through mineral means, we need to lower the aerobic zone so that microbiology can live down deeper. We got to lower that zone. And then we got to let those populations do their thing. We got to let them have time to chew apart those chemical and electrical bonds. And then we got to have time for that plant to respond and grow. And so what we find this year, we found a lot is we find on first year fields that we take on. So we'll see the conventional fields that the guys throw the chemical nitrogen and the herbicide on. It'll shoot up really quick, and the leaves will be stalk straight, and they'll be very lignified because they're kind of shocked and they're all stressed out, and they just grow very fast, right? And so the farmer sees that, and he looks from his pickup out on the road. He says, "Oh, look at that response," right? And then the living soil management method comes along where you got biology, nutrients, and minerals, right? And it's kind of like eating a really well balanced meal. You're not gonna eat one really good balanced meal and then be like Superman, right? You got to exercise. You got to eat more well balanced meals. And so in 2 days, their field's gonna look like it did something. Our field's just gonna kind of look lazy. The leaves are going to be peeled over because they're not going to be stressed. They're going to be kind of lazy. I like it when, especially when grasses are just like pointed straight up like goalposts. I don't like that. That means that they're making lignin, they're trying to complete their life cycle, they're stressed out, they're living on caffeine and Twinkies, and they're just like, let's get this over with and die. But the leaves that kind of lay over and they're lazy and the leaves get real wide and they're collecting sunshine like crazy, those plants aren't stressed out at all, right? And so that's something to pay attention to as well. So when we look at all of these different things, energy, matter, time, space, and intelligence is something that you have to pay attention to. But it's also you got to translate those principles into Mother Nature's language. I bet it'd be interesting to know what Mother Nature's language is saying. One of the best ways that I have found to dictate what Mother Nature is trying to tell us is what weeds grow in this ground of whatever kind. Now, nobody here on this webinar has weeds, though, I'm sure, right? Nobody has any weed issues of any kind.
No, no.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're all weed free. But for those other people that aren't on this webinar, we'll just talk about them for a minute. So when we go out into a field and we see weeds growing, I bet a lot of people will say, "Well, Josh, how do you control the weeds, right?" Well, why do y'all think the weeds are there in the first place? What's the suggestions? I would highly suggest to you that the God of nature has a plan, and the God of nature didn't set systems up very randomly. The God of nature sets systems up so that everything makes sense. And so, if that's true, if that holds, then that means that the weeds that are growing in this ground are there for a reason. And so, we just simply need to understand and wait to see what kind of weeds grow in this ground, and whatever weeds grow tell us a big story. And so, what we have found great success with is to be able to not control the weeds. I don't even like that word control. I'd actually offer a challenge to all you guys out there. If you can, when you're talking about cropping or even grazing, try to eliminate the word control from your vernacular and see if you can do it. It's a whole it changes the way you think about things. People say, "What do you do about weed control?" We don't do anything about weed control. All we do is we simply eliminate the need for those weeds to thrive. Those weeds are going to do their job and they're always going to be there. People are very worried, well, what if it reseeds and there's seeds in the soil bank? Fair enough. There's a whole lot of acres out there in the world right now that we treat that has a lot of weeds in it that are this tall, that are all shut down, that don't do anything, that are just on deck waiting to be called up because they don't need to perform. They're all there to do a job, and if the nutrients in the ground are right, and the soil profile is right, then those weeds will go away every single time. And so that's an interesting thing. That's one of the biggest ways. Now the same thing goes for pests. Same exact thing. They don't want to be around healthy nutrient dense stuff. They're just an indicator that stuff is already sick. I call bugs and weeds nature's paramedics.
Yeah, yeah, very, very good. I mentioned that one day to a colleague that the grasshoppers were just messengers, and that we shouldn't kill the messenger. One day I saw a plane flying over his fields, and so I texted him. I said, "What are you spraying?" One word came back: messengers. Yeah. So,
100%.
so Josh, this is awesome. This is awesome. I love what you do, and I love how you bring it down and make it practical. Um, why you and why now?
Yeah, why me? I ask that sometimes. Okay, so I'm not incredibly intellectual. I know I don't have all the answers. I believe that no matter how smart a man is or a woman is, she doesn't have all the answers either. I believe that we live in a system that was created by a higher power. I believe that the God of nature created everything, created us, and I believe that the God of nature's systems are perfect. I believe that if the God of nature's systems weren't perfect, none of this could exist. And so if that's true, then why me? Why now? I believe that people get a little too proud of themselves. I believe that they love technology. They love to make potions. They love to manipulate sciences. They love to do things of this nature. And to their credit, they've done a lot of good in the world. But when it comes to growing food and it comes to sustaining biological life, I think that that's less of the scientists' department and more of the God of nature's department. And so when I was young and I was 25 and I bought that farm, man, I didn't know what I was doing. I wanted a farm. I didn't quite know why. I just jumped in and I started going, and I had to heavily rely on, first I relied on the neighbors. And they told me, hey, you got to spray the weeds during the day until your lips start to buzz, and then you can get out of your sprayer and quit spraying weeds. And I thought, man, that is not something I want to do. I don't want my lips to start buzzing and there to be chemicals in my bloodstream like that. No way. And so I reverted to listening to the God of nature. I climbed up on a hill. I was very frustrated right after I bought that farm, and the ground was as hard as this tabletop. It wasn't in good shape. It had been chemically farmed for a lot of years, and I was frustrated. I thought, man, how do I fix this? How do I make this better? So I climbed up on a hill overlooking that farm, some pasture ground that wasn't fenced that we owned, and so just elk and deer had been managed in it for probably 25 years. And I climbed up there and I looked down on my farm and I just sat there on the hillside looking down, just thinking. And I noticed the ground I was sitting on was soft, it was dark, there was plants everywhere, there wasn't any bug holes in anything. And I just thought, okay, I got to start tuning in to the farmer who farms the ground I'm sitting on. and quit paying attention to the farmer that farms down there on the flats. Because I was spending money and spending energy and spending time, and I wasn't using any intelligence, but I was spending all this time to use my space to try to make a living for my family. It wasn't happening. It was terrible. It was worse than terrible. It was embarrassing. And so I thought, I wonder, because I had to rely on the God of nature so much, I says, I wonder if I can just tune in to how he farms up here on this hill and recreate that down there on the ground. And the biggest barrier that I came up with was the God of nature does things through an extended period of ecological time. And I thought, well, the banker needs paid back. I can't just leave things fallow. I can't just cut crops and leave them in the field like there's certain experts out there that suggest you do. That was my only profit margin. How am I going to leave anything in the field? That doesn't make any sense. And so how am I going to do this and farm like the God of nature farms and still make a living? And so what I realized is I believe that the God of nature created us with big brains and opposable thumbs for a reason. I believe that technology is very, very key in bridging the gap from how the God of nature does it and then speeding up ecological time. So you ask, why me? Why now? Me, because I was desperate. I didn't have any mentors. I didn't have any guides. I had to rely on the God of nature or nobody. There was a lot of people when I was coming up that would secretly enjoy watching me fail, right? Um, there was a lot of hurdles to overcome, a lot of knowledge that I didn't have, and it was interesting. I would go to these conferences, and I would go to university professors, and they would and great people, I'm sure, but they would say 26 letter long words, and you could tell there was a little bit of ego involved in all that. And I thought, man, that shouldn't be how this is. This shouldn't be such a complicated process that only like the creme de la creme of the educational intellectuals should know how to farm properly. That doesn't seem right to me. And so I thought this has to be simple. That's how come I started this webinar today, breaking it down into just the 5 basic things, because that's how it should be. I don't believe in using 26 letter long words nobody can understand. I don't believe in that. I believe that this should be very, very simple. This is not ever going to be easy, but is life ever easy? And so very, very simple approaches using very, very intense effort and leveraging technology to speed up ecological time. Now, why now? Is because right now we have finally figured out enough stuff with technology that we can mimic the God of nature using proper, efficient, cheap technology to be able to speed up ecological time and compress it down to a time frame that actually finally makes sense. Now, owning a company called Living Soil Management isn't an easy business, right? This isn't easy. This isn't just falling off a log, pitching products. We're not a product company. What we believe in doing is, and what our why is being able to speed up ecological time so that people can grow sustainable human nutrition. That's our why. And the way that we are able to do that now, Jared, is because technology has advanced to the point where we can send, semis and spray rigs and brewer mixer systems, and we can get specialized raw ingredients in just the right form to be able to accomplish the right job at the right time for the right price. And until now, I mean, until recently, I'll say, that has been very, very challenging. And so we've had to put up with some inefficiencies. We've had to put up with some imbalances. These guys that organic farm that dump tons and tons of manure on. I mean, nature understands manure, but man, after a while, you got crazy imbalances. And so we've been able to fine tune it. And so I think I honestly am blessed. Well, I know I'm blessed. Just my having a family and a good looking wife makes me blessed. But what makes me blessed beyond that is that the God of nature that I relied on so heavily, I think He knows that I pay attention. And he's like, okay. And so I've been allowed to understand a few things that he's been very willing to share with me. And over the thousands and thousands and thousands of acres that we've now consulted and walked and helped guys on, we've seen a lot of things and suggested a lot of principles and practices, many of which has proved up very, very well for these people. And so now it's pretty cool to know that the very, very incredibly challenging path to understand what we now understand can now bless other people's lives. And so that's very cool. So that's why me, and that's why now.
Love it. Um, so the next question, and then I'd love to hear what the next step is to work with living soil management. But why us, and why where we are? Why is it important that we're here today, that we're learning about what it means to work with nature's God? And why here? Why here in Nevada or Nebraska or the Dominican Republic, or, we have an international audience.
Yeah. So I think people get allowed to find their own way, right? I think I mean this isn't a theology webinar, but I believe that the God of nature is a father. And I believe as a good father, he allows his children to be able to stumble to learn how to walk, right? And then he allows them to fall before they learn how to run. And it's the same way with learning how to farm, quite honestly. Failure is part of it. We don't see a lot of 35-year-olds in strollers because they just couldn't figure out walking. You know what I mean? It takes a lot of failure to be able to figure stuff out. And so I think he looks down from above, and I think he says, "Hey, these guys they're working it out, and they're going to figure out that there's some things that they're doing that's going to poison their water. Uh-oh, I hope they figure that out soon." And he lets us stumble a little bit, and people have been so clever for so long, um, ever since World War II with their synthetics, that we've kind of come around and understand that, hey, just pouring more poison isn't, and synthetics and heavy salts and all this isn't a solution that's sustainable for a really long time. And you hear about the bugs that are now resistant to all the sides. We hear about the plants that are resistant to all the sides, right? I mean, that's so obvious, isn't it? I mean, we're going to be able to get away with a few tricks for a little while, for a short period of time, but Mother Nature's always going to win every single time. And so I had I leased some ground from a chemical rep once, and he got so frustrated, that guy. He would say, "Man, I just want to buy," and he said the name of some chemical, I don't remember. "Some of this stuff that just kills everything in the soil. Just kill everything, you know? Oh, you just got to kill it all." And I just remember he was so frustrated. He says, "But it's so expensive to just kill everything." And I was like, "Well, I wonder if there's a better way, sir, you know?" And so, yeah, I think why it's important in the Dominican Republic, why it's important in Kansas and Illinois and Indiana is because we have seen the other way. We have seen, the clever nature of men to be able to come up with the potions that they've come up with, and we realize, hey, this is a game of whack-a-mole that's very stressful, that is putting a lot of money in the pockets of people that rely on an industry for people's pancreases to fail and for people's kidneys to fail and for people's livers to fail. And how come there's 60% of young Americans have pre-type 2 diabetes? I read that. Is that right? Come on with this garbage. Like that doesn't seem, that does I feel like the report is in. We understand what it is to do what we're doing out there to our farm ground where we harvest our food, and then the back end effects. This isn't just an accident. Everybody listening to this, have y'all, anybody who's gluten intolerant or has like wheat allergies or anything like that, have you ever been to Italy and sat out on the Mediterranean Sea and ate a panini from Italy and then paid attention to how you feel after, it's way different than it is here. And there's a reason for that. This isn't just an accidental thing, right? It's very, very, very simple. And there's so much distraction and there's so much noise. And I'm going to be bold enough to say that there's so many lies that we don't have to pay attention to this garbage anymore. We really don't. Now, I'm not saying that Living Soil Management knows it all. We're a management and consultant company, right? That's one thing we go out and do. And so what we do is we partner with farmers and we say, okay, here's the rules. Mother Nature has to understand whatever we put on. We use every other tool available to us. We use zero synthetic chemicals of any kind always. And then we go from there and then we figure it out together. Because in my opinion, if we can just eliminate the synthetic poison, again, I don't think that's too much to ask. Uh, and so right now I feel like we have too much poison. We rely on too much poison. I feel like we take too many pills. You know, I can't remember. I was at got a checkup the other day, and the doctor says, "How many prescriptions are you on?" I said, "Zero." And they looked at me and all wide-eyed, and they say, "What? You're not?" And I said, "No. Why is that weird?" He says, "That's very rare. That's very rare." And so apparently, the average American is on 8 prescriptions. Is that even a thing? That blows my mind. If people eat food that relies on synthetics, then their body is depleted, and then that body, your physical body, relies on synthetics to just make it down the road. And so why don't we just cut the synthetics off at the source, leave synthetics for like plastic and building materials and stuff, but not to put in our bodies. You know what I'm saying?
For
And
sure.
so why
For
here, why
sure.
now? We got to be healthier, Jared. We got to convert sunshine into sustainable human nutrition, and it's 100% possible. It's very, very, very simple, like crazy simple. If everybody knew how simple it was, I sure would be out of a job, and that would be fine. But everybody in the world needs to pay more attention and eliminate synthetic poison from the environment for so many reasons, and that's why everywhere and why here and why now.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Very, very good. Well, Josh, it's been an honor to have you here. We appreciate you taking time out of your day and your travel schedule. And before we conclude, tell people what's the best way to get a hold of you, and specifically, who do you work with? Janelle asked a question. Are you fully crop based, or do you work with pasture management as well? I think that warrants an answer in this, because we have a lot of people that are grazers here that don't raise crops. And can you help those of us out too that are harvest with the cow instead of with the
Yes.
swap?
So the difference there is we utilize. So I'll just say again, we utilize technology to speed up ecological time and fix the soil and fix the crops, right? So in my opinion, on almost all of our acres that we manage for are crop based, but the spray rig that we use and the semis that we use, that's technology, right? But if you graze properly and manage your grazing properly, you don't need a spray rig. You don't need the shortcuts, right? You don't need that extra technology if you graze properly. Now you might have to sacrifice some ecological time, but usually on most grazing systems, the extra money that it costs to employ the spray rigs and the brew systems and all that stuff doesn't work on grazing pastures. Doesn't work on those kind of systems. So what we do there is we just sit down and we identify ways in which grazing can be done much more efficiently. Usually, in all my travels, I see way too light of cattle numbers, pounds to the acre, are way too light. There needs to be way more hooves, and they need to be moved quicker. But one because ranchers hate to be farmers, right? And farmers hate to be ranchers. And so it's like talking to a diametrically opposed group almost, right?
Yeah.
So when ranchers see weeds, they're like, I ain't no farmer. I'll just spray them. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that's what I run into sometimes. But on the management side, we heavily manage have good moisture based, whether it be rain or irrigation crops. Just because we see fast responses with biological farming if we can control the rain or if we have plenty of rain. As
Yep.
far as the grazing side, it's mostly consulting, right? There's your cattle can do the same job that my spray rig does. All my spray rig is doing is cycling nutrients. Literally all it's doing, inoculating the ground with biology and cycling nutrients. And so you guys, if you put your game face on, you can do that with your cattle as well.
Cool. Okay. How do we get a hold of you, Josh? These guys that want to learn more, want to.
Yeah, so we have a website, Living Soil MGMT. That's Mike Golf Mike Tango at .com, and there's ways that you can contact us in there. A little bit about our story. Um,
Yeah.
that website is undergoing some changes, I think, but I haven't talked to my website guy lately, but I think that's undergoing a few changes. But you can get a hold of us there. If
Yep.
you'd like to reach out to us, we have a LinkedIn account as well, Living Soil Management. And if you'd like to email us with very specific questions, it's Living Soil MGMT. We have a Gmail account too. It's at gmail.com. So. But
Love
it's
it.
an honor to be invited on here, Jared. I hope a few little nuggets of what we have spoken of today can be of service to somebody out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you being here today, Josh. I think it ties in really well with what our theme is, building a business after the order of God, doing things the right way, which a lot of times means foregoing some of the things that we've already learned, maybe going against the grain a little bit, what everybody else thinks and says works, and really following a higher source of intelligence. So it's been an honor. Thanks, Josh, and hope you and your family have a blessed day.
No, I appreciate it. Last words for me would be just please don't fall for the hype. I don't care who the person is. Don't fall for the hype. Pay attention to the God of nature and just keep it simple. That's all. So
Amen. Amen. Very well put. All right, you guys, go ahead and share in the chat what your takeaways are from Josh's. There's been a lot of people that have conversed in there with some good questions and some good comments that you've made. I appreciate your participation in the chat, everyone. And so, I met Josh years ago. We were at a Ranching for Profit Executive Link meeting. He was not on my board. But I got to know him, and he talked about what he was doing on his farm in Idaho. And I drove up there one day, spent a good part of the day with him, and drove around and looked at his farm, and realized, hey, there's a different way. Like, I grew up grazing. We were looking at actually purchasing some farm ground, and shortly thereafter, I took over management of an organic farm. It's my first exposure to pivot irrigation and to some of the farming methods. And so, I'm a big fan of going and learning from people who already have it figured out. And I'd watched Josh from a distance and thought, hey, I need to spend some time with him. And so I did. And it's been neat to see how he's grown his business, how he's grown his impact, how he's followed the calling that God put on his heart. And has certainly also been able to see the opposition and the challenge that it is, and that I think each of us will face when we engage and we kind of burn the boats or let go of what is maybe more sure, and we start to follow what is maybe that calling. It takes a lot of faith and takes a lot of courage. I've been thinking about what does this group need? We can talk a lot. We can talk all day about the tactics and the tools and the technology. But how do you give somebody faith to be able to ensure that, hey, when they feel that call, when they feel that nudge, they're just going to go for it. And they're not going to look back, and they're not going to second guess. and they're not going to let the naysayers, the neighbors, your family members talk you out of what God's put on your heart to do. And I guess, Josh, you're still here. What's helped you get through that, that trough where, you face some pretty intense opposition, some hard things, and you're not out of the woods, right? You're,
No, no, yeah,
you're,
we're just getting started. We're just barely getting started. In my opinion, if you're feeling really, if you're doing a good thing and you're feeling really, really, really stiff headwinds, um, the worst thing you can do is turn your back to it. Um, I promise every single thing that I've ever just decided to do that was good, and I just decided not to quit and gave it all my energy and effort and relied heavily on the guidance from above. Every single time that thing has happened, I say that with the utmost humility. That is not because all I had to do was keep my legs moving and not quit, because quitting is always an option. I just decided that's not an option. I made sure that my intentions were not, ego based. I decided that ego was not my amigo, right? And I decided if I measure success in this life as what I can contribute to others, which is basically what pure capitalism is, if you are of service to your fellow man, then they will reciprocate, and you will have abundance. And just focusing on how many people am I currently serving. When I was absolutely destitute and broke, I wasn't serving very many people at all. And as soon as I decided to serve more people, that's when things started turning around. And so just the plan on headwinds, plan on crushing adversity. If your adversity is really light and you have an easy life, you're not doing the right things. You need to do better. I'm calling you out. If everything is easy for you, I don't believe in easy. I believe that this life is intended to be hard, and you should be increasing in strength and wisdom the entire time. And if we fall into the trap and the spider web of saying, "Hey, I'm set in my ways." Okay, fair enough. You know what you are if you're set in your ways? You've just hit a concrete wall, and if water does that, what's water? It's dammed. And so if you want to damn yourself, go ahead, be set in your ways. But if you're willing to be brave and you're willing to not bury your talents in the sand, but you're willing to use them and multiply them, then it's going to be hard as can be your whole life. Fair enough. But I'll tell you what, I've never felt so fulfilled, so full of joy, so full of peace, so full of happiness as I do right now, literally. And what I have to do is I have to pay attention. Every word that I speak, I gotta run it through my little filter here and make sure, okay, do you honest to goodness believe that that is true? And if I don't, man, I don't say it. And that, to me, what that allows is it allows heaven to be able to trust me. And then I'm able to take another step forward in a proper direction. And holy crap, the headwind is stiff. It's hard. I get beat up. There's crazy problems. People die that I'm relying on, like it's insane. Um, but I'll tell you what, this is the only way that I have found the best life that there is. I've lived a lot of different ways. This is the best way right here. And so that's how to get through
well
the
said.
headwinds. That's how to get through the headwinds.
Face them head on. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And thinking back to right after I met Josh, I'd actually rejoined the EL for 1 year. It was a very inspired decision. I knew that I needed to do it. I didn't know exactly why. The EL is the executive link. We heard from Dallas yesterday about the ranching for profit. And so I joined that. Um, we were facing some pretty significant financial challenges in our business at that time. Uh, we were really struggling. I grew up with a very different ranch than we currently manage. We had to sell off a huge portion of the ranch that was owned by the government for reasons that were a little bit beyond our control. And so we went from having a year-round cow herd of 1,000 cows to now custom grazing and trying to figure out what the right enterprise mix was. And we tried a lot of different things, and none of them really seemed to quite work. We were just kind of a break-even business, actually going backwards a little bit. And I knew things were bad, and I knew that we were in a distress situation with the bank. I walked to the mailbox one day, opened the mailbox, and pulled out a letter from the bank, and looked a little bit different than a typical bank letter. When I opened it up, the only thing that stood out on that letter was foreclosure. And I thought, holy cow. What about this whole stewardship, legacy, regeneration, these things that I'm trying to embody? This ranch that my wife and I were blessed to inherit could very well be stripped away from us. Now, granted, we still had a lot of equity. We were able to restructure things. But when that letter came, I realized, hey, I have a choice. That was a piece of information. And how I internalized that was not the ideal way, because I let that piece of information dictate my worth. And my self-worth was tied to my net worth. And as my net worth started to decline and vary, my self-worth did as well. And there came a point when I thought, I can't get this figured out. I can't do things right. We're facing a lot of financial challenges. And the thought came, and it wasn't a godly thought, but it came to my head that my family would be better off if I were to remove myself from the equation and they were to collect on my life insurance policy. And for a few moments, a few days, that thought percolated, and I didn't immediately cast it out. I didn't say, well, that's a stupid idea, Jared. It sat there in my head, and it wreaked havoc on me. I began to think, well, maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe I'm not a good provider for my family. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. And all indicators show that I really didn't. Like, I was working hard, but every year we got a little bit deeper in debt. We tapped into a little more equity. We subsidized this ranch with a little more equity. And the writing was on the wall, hey, you can't continue to do this. And in my mind, I was the common denominator. So, hey, let's remove that. And there's enough there in that policy that they could pay off debt and they could have a clean start. I'm forever grateful that I had a mentor who shook me and said, hey, Jared, those are a bunch of lies. He helped me to recognize and realize that wasn't from God. That wasn't inspiration, that those were absolute lies. And I wish I could say that, wow, we found the silver bullet, but I'm also glad that we didn't. For years we struggled, and we tried and we worked to try to figure out, okay, what do we do with this ranch that we've been given? And what do I do with this mission that God has given me to teach others? It hasn't been an easy journey, you guys. And I'm not here teaching this class because I have it all figured out. I'm here because I'm a student and I need it just as much as each of you. I'm here because I believe that success is not just profitability. It's not just a good positive balance on a balance sheet. I believe those things are a result of living the mission that God's put on our hearts and doing it in alignment with His plan for us. And I hope, and my prayer is that now I'm ready to build a business the way God wants to. And to bring this full circle, yesterday, while one of the presenters was presenting, I had a knock on the door. And this came. It's the biggest check that I've ever seen, you guys. And I don't say that to say, look at me. It was a very different experience than walking to that mailbox and opening the foreclosure letter. Some interesting things happened as I opened that. I realized it didn't solve any of my problems. I realized it was just, again, a piece of information. It was just numbers on a check. And when I told my kids, hey, we got a big check in the mail, and they looked at it and they're like, that's not a big check. That's just a regular check. And I'm like, you're right. It just has a couple extra zeros on it. So, to them, it's just like black and white. Dad, what's the big deal? It's just a check. You're right. It's just a check. It's just a foreclosure letter. It's just a piece of information. That foreclosure letter did not need to destroy my self-worth. And this check does not need to boost my self-worth either. God's the one who gives us our value. And it's only when we look to Him, instead of looking sideways, instead of looking at others, instead of looking at our bank account, at our balance sheet, at what other pieces of information say, that we can truly have peace and joy and even prosperity in this life. So it's kind of interesting. It's taken us 29 years. And you know what? We still don't have it all figured out. But I've begun to surround myself with some wonderful people who do have some things figured out. They say that you are the sum of your 5 closest friends. And you know what? If you don't have good friends, that's okay. You can rent them. Like, that's why I hang around Josh. That's why I hang around Larry and Stacy Wallace. That's why I pay to be part of mastermind groups. It's because I want to raise my level of thinking. And in so doing, my value raises. And it's not so much the monetary value as it is my ability to serve and fulfill and to live the mission God's given me, to be able to magnify this calling that He's put on my heart and to be able to influence others. And that's largely why this summit's happening here. You know, like Josh mentioned, there's nothing special about me. I'm not smarter than the next guy. It was just, hey, I didn't quit this time. I quit on a lot of things. I'm sure glad I didn't quit on my life. I didn't quit on our family. I didn't quit on our marriage. And I don't think God would have blamed me or condemned me if I'd have quit on the ranch when we got that foreclosure letter. If we'd have just said, hey, you know what? Let's just bail. Let's just bail out right now. The interesting thing is that check that came in the mail yesterday is a lot less than what we would have sold out for a few years ago if we'd have said, hey, let's quit now. So here we are. Josh, it's been good to visit with you.
Hey, it was a high honor. I'm going to go to some other commitments now, but thank you so much for inviting me. I've received so much here. Just hearing your words, Jared. Real proud of you. But I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to wish everybody out there a wonderful afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you all very soon.
Okay, have a blessed day. Thanks, Josh.